He's the best. He's
Yeah.
such a good guy. He's such a good actor, and we just always talk about when we do scenes together, we feel very lost.
There is something quietly devastating about watching someone spend their entire life making things work for everyone around them while slowly losing pieces of themselves in the process. Most people who recognize Sara Gilbert picture Darlene Conner, the sharp-tongued, quick-witted middle child from one of the most beloved sitcoms in American television history. They picture the sarcasm, the creativity, the unshakable cool. What they do not picture is a 6-year-old girl standing at the Hollywood Walk of Fame, watching her older sister receive one of the entertainment world's highest honors, and deciding right then and there that she needed to chase that same impossible standard. They do not picture a teenager filming a hit television show while silently carrying a secret she could not yet name. They do not picture a woman who built careers, saved shows, created empires, and still felt afraid. Sara Gilbert's story is not a simple Hollywood success story. It is something far more complicated, far more human, and in many ways, far more heartbreaking. Sara Rebecca Beals was born on January 29, 1975, in Santa Monica, California, into a family where the entertainment industry was not a dream. It was just the air everyone breathed. Her maternal grandfather was Harry Crane, one of the writers and co-creators of The Honeymooners, one of the most iconic sitcoms in the history of American television. Her mother, Barbara, worked as a Hollywood producer and talent manager. And then there were her siblings. Her adopted older sister, Melissa Gilbert, had already become a household name by playing Laura Ingalls on Little House on the Prairie, one of the most beloved family dramas of the 1970s. Her adopted brother, Jonathan Gilbert, was on that same show. So when Sara was just 6 years old and stood there watching Melissa receive a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, something clicked in her. She turned to her mother and said she wanted to be an actress too. It sounds like an adorable, innocent moment. Looking back, it was also the moment a very small child quietly placed an enormous weight on her own shoulders, a weight she would carry for decades. She started the way many child actors do, with a Kool-Aid commercial, then small television appearances, then a CBS TV movie in 1984. That same year, at just 9 years old, she made a decision that tells you everything about the pressure she was already internalizing. She dropped her birth surname, Beals, and took on the last name Gilbert, the name her sister had made famous, permanently tethering herself to the family legacy and to the standard that came with it. She was 9. Most kids that age are worried about recess. Sara Gilbert was already reshaping her identity around the expectations of a world that had not fully introduced itself to her yet. At 13, she walked into an audition for a new ABC sitcom called Roseanne, and everything changed. She was cast as Darlene Conner, the sarcastic and fiercely intelligent middle child of a working-class family in Illinois. The show debuted in 1988 and quickly became a cultural phenomenon. At its peak, Roseanne was pulling in audiences of more than 20 million viewers per week, and Sara's portrayal of Darlene was a central reason why. Critics praised her. Audiences adored her. Emmy nominations followed. And on the surface, it looked like a young actress discovering exactly what she was born to do. But the reality was far more layered than any of those glowing reviews captured. Darlene Conner was rebellious, restless, always uncomfortable in her own skin, and quietly searching for something she could not put into words. Audiences watched that character and saw great writing and strong performance. What they did not see was how much of what Sara was bringing to that screen was not performance at all. She has spoken in interviews about how her teenage years on that show coincided with a private realization that she was gay, a realization that she could not safely share with anyone in the Hollywood landscape of the late 1980s and early 1990s. Not with the public. Not with producers, barely even with herself. So she kept it locked away. And every single day she went to that set and played a character who wore her inner chaos openly, while Sara's own truth stayed completely hidden beneath the surface. During those same years, she fell into a real relationship with her co-star Johnny Galecki, who played her on-screen boyfriend David. She has said publicly that she genuinely liked him, that she had a real crush on him when they first met. But something kept going wrong in a way she could not explain. Whenever they were together romantically, a deep sadness would settle over her. Johnny, who by all accounts is a kind and emotionally perceptive person, noticed it and began to wonder if he was somehow responsible. He could not figure out what he was doing wrong because Sara had not yet figured out the full truth herself. Eventually, she told him, She explained that her sadness had nothing to do with him, and everything to do with the fact that she was beginning to understand she was gay. What Johnny Galecki did next says everything about who he is as a person. He responded with nothing but love, kept her secret for years, and protected her completely. When Sara finally decided, more than 20 years later, to discuss the story publicly, she called him beforehand to ask if it was all right. He told her he was proud of her and offered to be right beside her when she spoke. That is the kind of friendship that forms in the quiet corners of shared secrets and mutual respect. What makes Sara Gilbert's story even more remarkable and more quietly exhausting when you really think about it is that during all of this emotional complexity, she was simultaneously doing something no other major television star of her era was doing. She went to college. Not just any college. She enrolled at Yale University, one of the most academically demanding institutions in the world, while still appearing in a top-rated network sitcom. The producers of Roseanne valued her so much that they restructured the entire production schedule around her education. They moved filming earlier in the season. They built a separate soundstage in New York so she could shoot her scenes without leaving Connecticut. They transported cast and crew to New York during her Christmas and spring breaks just to keep her in the show. She graduated in 1997, magna cum laude, with a Bachelor of Arts degree in art and a concentration in photography. The same year Roseanne ended its original run. After Roseanne wrapped, Sara entered a chapter of her career that most people have entirely forgotten, and that forgetting is actually part of the tragedy. She kept working. She appeared in films including Poison Ivy alongside Drew Barrymore, High Fidelity with John Cusack, and Riding in Cars with Boys. She had recurring roles on acclaimed television series including ER, 24, and Will and Grace. She later joined The Big Bang Theory as scientist Leslie Winkle, once again sharing the screen with Johnny Galecki. But none of it produced the kind of cultural resonance that Roseanne had. None of it became a defining new chapter. And for someone as driven and disciplined as Sara, that gap between what she had accomplished and what she was reaching for had to be felt. What she was actually doing during those years, though, was something harder and quieter than any role. She was building a real life. She was in a long-term relationship with television producer Allison Adler, with whom she had 2 children, a son named Levi, born in 2004, and a daughter named Sawyer Jane, born in 2007. For most of that relationship, Sara kept her personal life entirely out of public view. She did not publicly come out until July 2010, when she was preparing to launch the talk on CBS. She has described even that moment as something that still frightened her, even after everything she had already survived. The talk was entirely Sara's idea. She had been attending mothers' groups after the birth of her daughter and kept noticing something. Women were having raw, honest, funny, layered conversations with each other about the realities of their lives, about parenting, relationships, aging, identity, in ways that television had never quite captured. She thought there was a show in that observation, brought the concept to CBS, and on October 18, 2010, the talk premiered, with Sara co-hosting alongside Julie Chen, Sharon Osbourne, and others. The show was an immediate success. It won a Daytime Emmy Award in 2016 for Outstanding Entertainment Talk Show, with Sara as creator and executive producer. It consistently attracted more than 1 million viewers per episode. She had built something genuinely meaningful from a personal insight, and in doing so, she had also finally found a platform where she could tell her own story on her own terms. It was on that show, in 2013, that she sat down and walked through the story of her teenage years, her relationship with Johnny, the secret she had been carrying, and what it had cost her emotionally. Johnny was nearby when she spoke. And even in that moment of visibility, even with all the success in the Emmy and the platform she had created herself, she admitted that talking openly about being gay still made her feel afraid of what it might do to her career. That is a sentence worth sitting with. Sara Gilbert had created one of the most successful daytime talk shows in a generation, and she still felt afraid. The industry she grew up in had embedded that fear so deeply that it did not simply disappear when the power dynamics finally shifted in her favor. She left the talk in August 2019, after 9 years. At her final taping, her daughter Sawyer performed an original song she had written called Mama, and the entire studio was in tears. But what the audience watching that emotional farewell did not fully know was everything that was happening behind it. In the same 6-month window of 2019, Sara lost several enormous pillars of her life simultaneously. Her marriage to singer and songwriter Linda Perry, whom she had married in March 2014 and with whom she had a son named Rhodes, born in February 2015, was falling apart. She and Perry had appeared genuinely happy. They had released a children's album together. They had built a blended family of 3 kids. But by August 2019, the marriage was over. Sara filed for legal separation in December 2019, and the divorce took 5 years to finalize. And on top of all of that personal upheaval, she was also dealing with the ongoing fallout from one of the most public professional disasters of her career. In 2018, Sara had been one of the primary architects of the Roseanne revival. She had worked hard to bring the original cast back together, had served as an executive producer, and had helped make it one of the highest-rated broadcast shows of the season. Then Roseanne Barr posted a racist tweet directed at Valerie Jarrett, a black woman who had served as a senior advisor to President Obama. ABC canceled the show within hours. Sara put out a statement almost immediately, calling the comments abhorrent and saying they did not reflect the beliefs of the cast or crew. And then Roseanne Barr publicly turned on her, claiming in interviews that Sara had destroyed her life and her show. She made those accusations against a woman who had spent her teenage years working alongside her, a woman whose entire career had begun on Barr's show. But Sara did not fold. Instead, she proposed a spin-off. She pitched keeping the entire cast, writing out the Roseanne character in the first episode, and continuing the story of the Conner family. ABC agreed. The Conners premiered in October 2018, with Roseanne's character written out as having died from an accidental opioid overdose. Sara was now both the lead actress and the executive producer of a show she had essentially built from the wreckage of one that had just burned down around her. The Conners ran until 2025, completing 7 seasons. It was, by any honest measure, a success. But it never reached the heights of what the revival had been before everything collapsed, and Sara carried the weight of that entire history every single day she showed up to that set. That is perhaps the most defining quality of Sara Gilbert's story. She always kept showing up, through secrets she could not share, through relationships that ended, through professional disasters that would have broken other people, through industry pressures that made her afraid to be herself even after she had built an empire. She just kept going. She kept rebuilding. She kept making things work for everyone around her while quietly absorbing the personal cost of all of it. She now has 3 children, a production company, 2 Emmy nominations, a Daytime Emmy win, and a career that has spanned nearly 4 decades. By every external measure, she is a success story. But the real story of Sara Gilbert is not the kind Hollywood usually tells. It is a story of what it cost a person to grow up in an industry that, for most of her life, punished people for being who they were. It is a story of a girl who decided at 6 years old to chase a standard that was never really hers to begin with, and who spent the next 4 decades trying to reconcile who she was with what the world around her expected her to be. It is a story of a woman who built things, lost things, rebuilt things, and never once made her pain the centerpiece of the narrative. That kind of resilience is genuinely extraordinary. It is also, depending on how long you sit with it, one of the saddest things you will ever read about someone who deserved so much more grace along the way.